Ah, what a year. Hello everyone and welcome to 2025. I know we're starting off by looking back at 2024, but this is one of my favorite videos to film because I have really bad object permanence, which means that as soon as a project is done and it goes in the wardrobe, 8 times out of 10 I forget about it. So it's really nice for me to look back throughout the year to remember all the things I did make, because I often end the year, if I didn't just finish something, I end the year with no sense of accomplishment whatsoever because of this. So I guess this is more of a personal prep, like a self-pep talk before 2025, but thank you for coming along with me. So in these videos, usually I just cover all the projects that I made in 2024, how I felt about them, and also some key aspects of them that I will take into mind if I ever do a project similar to that. So starting in January is really easy because actually I made nothing in January. That's not unusual. I think January is quite a hard month. Everything's dark, and I had just finished my big project, which was in December. I made an 1890s cape coat, which I absolutely adore. I'll insert a photo here. I know it's 2023 technically, but it's really cute. I had just finished that project, so I wasn't really ready to dive into something big again. So January was by default really quiet. In February, I discovered this online shop called Repeated Originals, I think it is. I'll leave the link down below. But basically it's a shop where they've digitized some original 19th century patterns from magazines, and then they sell them to you so that you can print them on A4 or you can print them on A3 or like the big print job paper. And I really like that because I love using historically accurate patterns, but I really don't like having to trace them out or what's the word? Enhance them? No. Scale them up from magazines. That kind of work just doesn't interest me. So I always put it off. So it was really great to have that hard bit done. So I did a morning corset, which was just something that really caught my eye because I think nowadays we really don't know enough about how Victorian clothing changed depending on the time of the day, depending on the situation, and how circumstantial clothing was. So I was really interested in this morning corset because it was very clearly something that was meant to be, to our modern ideals, comfortable, or at least I think the closer concept is dressed down. So I made this corset. I was a bit unhappy with it. I think the kind of design it is would flatter less curvy bodies, as in like it doesn't provide enough support. It's not meant to. It's meant to be, the way I equated it in my mind was that you've got a bra, which is a corset, and this was more like a bralette, but it didn't provide me enough support for me to want to wear it at all throughout the day. But I did really like that project, and I think if I just added a bit more boning, that would be a really good project to remake, because I think it could be a very nice day-to-day corset. That project was really good because I used stash fabric. So this is something I'm going to come to at the end, but I tried to use as much stash fabric as possible this year, and I'm really happy with my stats on this. If you're wondering how I keep track of this, I have a spreadsheet that I got from someone else, and it's just got important details that I like, and this is a spreadsheet I've been using for I think 3 years now. But it just has things like garments per month, fabric origin and fabric content, and how I feel about the garment, and whether the fabric was from the stash or not. So these are the things I chose to track. I added some things to the spreadsheet, I took some away, that kind of thing. So in February, I also finished a cardigan. So this is the thing that I think has made me sew less, is that I'm really into knitting and crochet, and I've done a lot more of that this past year. So I finished my airy cardigan, which is a pattern by Fable Knitwear. I can link all these patterns down below if you like. I really enjoyed this. I used some random unknown yarn that I had in my stash from like a big reel, but it created a really comfortable, light and aesthetic cardigan. I absolutely love this pattern and I would highly recommend it. It was really easy to follow because I switched out the bodice is meant to be made from moss stitch, but I made it from just stockinette, so I made it quite quickly considering the voluminous sleeves. So I would highly recommend it. I absolutely loved it. Then in March, I finished my adjustable skirt project by making an 18th century linen skirt. So this was part of my exploration this year into more adjustable, historically inspired clothes. And that's because the big crux of historical clothes are that they are meant to fit over very specific foundations, because that's just how life was in the past. However, I don't wear stays or corsets every day, but I would still like to wear these historically inspired pieces. So I was trying to find ways to make it adjustable with a body that expands naturally throughout the day, that isn't regulated by a more like structured undergarment. So this was based on just a split skirt with a waistband for a more modernized look, so that I could wear shirts tucked into it. And it was a really big success after some teething issues. So I had to add snaps to the slits on the side because I ended up making the skirt slightly too small, so that the overlap actually showed sometimes. Obviously, because you would wear something over it in the 18th century, that wouldn't have been such a big deal, but I didn't. So I added snaps just to the closure, and after that it was absolutely secure. I love it. And I also workshopped a way to make sure that the ties didn't like cut into me and stayed stable and didn't droop throughout the day, by adding hooks to the insides of the waistband so that the opposing tie could hook onto the waistband, and that worked really well. So I'll insert some footage of that because it was a really good problem solving moment. That's an 100% linen skirt that I used fabric from my stash, so really happy with that, and I've worn it loads over the summer as well. Then in April, I had to do my big project, which was my 1860s ball gown, because I was going for my first ball in May. So for this, I also used stash fabric. I used this, like, I'm not sure if it's considered a check, maybe? Yellow silk that I got really discounted. And I had 10 meters of it in my stash because it's what they had left. And I think it was technically meant to be like upholstery fabric, because it's very... It doesn't have the same quality as, you know, you would have used in historical, but it was in my stash and it actually worked out really great. So for this, I made a big ball gown skirt and an evening bodice. I don't have a lot of footage of this because I only wore it to the ball and I haven't had a proper photo shoot of it yet. And I know it's been like 2/3 of a year since, but I don't know where to shoot it. So here we are. But I'm really happy with that project. I think it really pushed me. I hadn't done a big project like that in a little while. So I really enjoyed it. And I actually really love making and wearing ball gowns. I love it. And then I also made an 1860s hooded cape based on one of those repeated original patterns. And I made it because honestly, I just had this vision. When I saw the pattern, I thought it was so stinking cute. And I had this vision of wearing it, you know, even if it was in the evening in May, it could be cold on the way to and from the ball. And I did wear it and I thought it looked super cute. It was giving like fairy godmother vibes, but like not really. But I had to buy fabric new for that, but I got it really discounted. And it was one of those upholstery velvet that's like kind of plasticky on the back, which I guess it was good in the way they added some structure to it without needing additional interlinings. And then I used the worst cotton sateen I've ever had to work with for the lining. I absolutely love that project. I think it worked out really well, and I think it went really beautiful with the whole ensemble. So the other thing I finished in April was my dawn jumper. So a couple of years ago, I made my sunset jumper, which is this pink, beautiful jumper. And I wanted to make another one just because of how much I love that jumper. And I used the same kind of ombre yarn, but in a different colorway, which was like a blue to like red kind of tones. And it just reminded me of sort of like woods, frosty woods in the winter morning, kind of with those dazzling colors and like the dying wood, like the reddish brown of the wood. I don't know, it was like a fantastical idea in my head. It was a very simple jumper to make. I do have a video about making that kind of jumper if you're new to crochet. It was the kind of thing, the first sort of garment that I crocheted that really worked well, and I absolutely love it. And I did have to buy yarn for that. Then in May, after having such a busy time making the ball gown, I just needed a little bit of a break. So the only thing I made was this cute little wash bag with some fabric that I bought on my trip to Japan in March. So this was just something to have in my bag to put all the loose things that you have in your bag. But it came out really nice. And I think it actually motivated me to use some more of these little cotton scraps that I have to make like household bits. So yeah, a cute little quick project. Then in June, I finished, see, the way I'm logging these is the month I finished it, but all throughout May I also worked on this, which was an 1860s day bodice. So I had some leftover fabric that matched the silk, and I wanted to make a day bodice because I thought it would be really nice to have a full ensemble. I don't know what to wear to, but I thought it was really nice because one of the 1860s things that is really characteristic is that you could have a day and evening bodice but the same skirt, which is so clever considering how much yardage went into these skirts because of the crinolines. So that was one of the really clever things, and I really want to do a full in-depth video about this because I think it's kind of revolutionary in fashion to start creating those, or at least go back to those separate pieces that kind of disappeared in the beginning of the 19th century. So yeah, the day bodice was kind of a fight to hell. I had no motivation left to do it because obviously I wasn't wearing it anywhere and the ball had already been, and I'd been in the 1860s for 2 months. So it took a while, but it actually turned out really nice. I was really proud of the way I fit the mock-up for that, and I think the bodice itself fit really well. Don't actually know because I haven't tried it on since I finished it. So I guess that's for us to find out when I do the final footage for those videos. But coming in 2025 for sure, I want to do a whole 1860s sort of all of the stuff I made and how balls worked and things like that. So look out for those videos. Then in July, I worked on my embroidered little needle book and my plain needle book. That was just a quick little project. I think I was in a bit of a sewing slump, and those were really nice because I could just focus on those two things without having to worry about fit or whatever, and I could just worry about like embroidering this beautiful little needle book. So I also have a video about that. It's a really cute addition to your sewing kit if you want to make them. And I also use entirely stashed fabric for them. And then in August, I finished, oh yeah, and that's, I wanted cute little projects for July because I was working on my big project again, which was an ensemble to wear to my Taylor Swift concert in August. I really wanted to make something for it because I think it's one of the few opportunities where that as modern makers, we get to make things that cross over our worlds, so things that we enjoy in historical costume. So once I saw the TTPD stuff earlier in April, I thought it would really lend itself very easily to an 18th century interpretation. And I'd been meaning to make some 18th century staples that I could have so that when I make a full 18th century ensemble, I already have those staple things like a stays and petticoat that can go under it. So I just did it. I used mainly silk from my stash, but I also had to buy 1 yard of silk, matching silk taffeta to finish off the stays. The stays are a bit of a failure. I'm not too happy with the fit of it after I wore it to the concert. I think there are some fixes I could probably make. I just haven't had the wave span to do it. So, wave span? Wingspan? Wavelength? What was I trying to say? But the petticoat turned out really well, and I think that's the most versatile part of it. And also, it's not like I don't have other stays that I can use. So yeah, that was a really good project, and I think it was a big success at the concert as well. People were really nice about it, and it was really sweet. And then in September, I finally finished my first pretty house-made corset sample. If you're new here on the channel, I'm currently doing a PhD in corsets, looking particularly at pretty house-made corsets, and I am making a few samples for it. So this sample that I made was based on a custom drafted pattern, and it was just a tester for me to test out different types of seam finishes to try and get as close as possible to the originals. I learned a lot from that, and it was really important for me to do that one before I actually do the recreations that I'm doing for my PhD. So it was something that I've been putting off because I really built it up in my head, you know, like this is actual academic research, I need to make the most of it, I need to make sure it's perfect. And I felt like that was really daunting. Usually with corsets, I'm just like, yeah, I'll just make another one. But that one had all this like baggage to it. So it took me a while to actually like get the courage to make it, I guess. But it turned out to be a nice corset. I've learned a lot. It's not the pretty housemaid that is going to be the final ones for my project, but it's a good corset in my stash now. And then in October, I made 2 projects that were just whim-based projects, which was I saw a dress online on TikTok that I felt I wanted in my wardrobe, but I didn't want to pay the price for it, and I had some fabric in my stash. So I tried making it, and it's a sort of witchy V-neck dress with a smocked waist. And it was really nice because it's super comfortable, but it's still kind of witchy. It has nice twirlability to it. And yeah, it was a quick project to make where the stakes were low and I could just do whatever I wanted, so it was really nice. I have a video about that if you'd like, and I think I'm also going to put the pattern for that up on my Patreon if you're interested. I sometimes do put patterns up on my Patreon, but just keep in mind that they're just the copies of the patterns that I've used, and they're really good points for you to start, but they're not, you know, commercial patterns. And then I also made my elasticated waist, inspired by the smocked dress. I just kept thinking about this adjustable things and how I could use elastic in a historical garment. There's a whole video about that. I absolutely love this skirt. I think it worked out really great. It's super comfortable, but it still has that really distinguished 1890s silhouette. And I love it. It was a great project. I used things from my stash, turned out well, super versatile. Can't wait to wear it more. 10 out of 10. In November, the only thing I finished was this jumper, which I knit. This is a mohair jumper that has a deep V-neck at the back. I'll insert some proper footage of it. But I really enjoyed making this. It was a very simple pattern to follow. It worked. And I really haven't stopped wearing it since I finished it. I think it's super comfortable, but it's also like effortlessly elegant, I find. But really simple, and it's in green, which I love. And yeah, absolutely loved it. I'll leave the pattern down below again if you'd like to look into it. Then in December, the only things I made were crochet and knitting again. So because I've been moving, so I moved houses in November, I didn't really have the facilities to do any sewing for a few weeks, so I had to pack up my whole sewing room, and then I had to unpack my whole sewing room and organize everything. I'm finally back up to sewing, and I do have a sewing project on the go, which I hope to finish very soon, and a few backlogs of things because I always have things to make. But I didn't sew a lot during that time period, but I did have some downtime when I had to like sit down and take a break, and so I did a lot of knitting. So I finished an off-the-shoulder acrylic jumper. It was made of the same yarn as my Airy cardigan. This was just a whim. I've always wanted one of those off-the-shoulder jumpers that made you feel like you're in a 2000s movie, and I just thought I'll make one, why not? And I had just this leftover yarn, so I used up nearly all the yarn, but it was entirely from stash. It fits great. I really love it. The only thing I need to fix is that it doesn't quite stay in place, so I'm going to run a little bit of almost like a prick stitch, but with yarn over the top edge so that it doesn't roll up and it stays in place. I might do that straight after the video because I've been putting it off, but I'm going to try it on for this video, so that's a good way to get stuff done. And then the other thing I made was just I crocheted 3 beanie hats to give to people for Christmas, and that is it for my December and my 2024. So this year I made 18 things. I didn't count the beanies individually, but I guess if I did, it would be 21 things. I think that's pretty on par with how many things I make per year. It's about like 20-ish. But the real change is that I made a lot more knitting and crochet things this year rather than sewing. I think I lost my mojo for sewing a little bit, but I'm hoping to find it again in 2025. And the thing that I'm really happy about is that everything seemed to work out well. And so in terms of types of garments, I made 12 sewing projects, 3 knitted projects, and 2 crochet. And then I made 10 historical projects and 7 other. Other is anything that's like either cosplay adjacent. I didn't make any cosplay this year, actually. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's kind of crazy to think about. But I definitely want to do more cosplay next year. I already have plans and everything. Just need to actually get around to doing it. And other is like modern dresses or like historically adjacent things like that. And then in terms of fabric source is what I'm really happy with, because 66% of all of my projects, and that includes knitting, crochet and sewing, were from the stash. So either yarn or fabric that I already had in my stash. And I only bought things to supplement it. So I didn't really buy new fabric for an entire project. So the project wasn't entirely made of new fabric. I only ever bought new fabric to supplement existing fabric that I had if I was missing something. So I'm really happy with that because that's what I really wanted to make. If you're interested in a bit more of the statistics, I used to put them in the video, but I think that could be quite boring for some people. So instead, I just put my graphics up on my Patreon post about this video now. So if you want to have a look at that, check out my Patreon. You can find the link at the end or in the description box. And I think that's it for 2024. I could tell you a little bit about my projects for 2025, maybe. Do you like to hear? So in terms of cosplay, I've been putting it off, but for a long time I really wanted to make Elizabeth Swann from Pirates of the Caribbean. It's one of those films that really marked me as I was growing up, and I really wanted to make her burgundy dress, which is sort of a 17th century? 17th century inspired dress. I've never made 17th century things, but I think it could be quite fun to try and make it like a 17th century thing, but still super accurate to the film. Do you know what I mean? I think that could be a really interesting project. Unfortunately, I don't think I have anything in my stash that would work for that, so I would need to buy new fabric, but that's a problem for later. In terms of historical things, I have so many historical things I want to make. I just did my fabric stash video, and you could see in that I have so much fabric and plans. I think I'm just gonna have to really sit down and think about what I want to make, but I think I want to make a Regency coat next. I'm not sure, we'll come back to it. And then the last thing I really want to make is more corsets, because that's part of my PhD and I do need to make them for that. But yeah, I think those are my plans for 2025. I'm really excited. I'm looking forward to this year. Thank you so much for sticking with me, and I will see you all in the next video.